Hi, I am Ada Bobino, the founder and director of the San Antonio Black International Film Festival. And we are really excited this year. Every year we change themes. This year, of course, our theme is HBCU Film Love. And so we tried to get as many HBCU panelists and to speak on different topics to add to just a well-rounded look at the different parts of the industry. And today we're going to be focusing on casting, and we have two um, working professionals in the business, one casting director as well as one casting associate, to talk to us about the world of casting. And I want to bring both of you on. We have Erica Hart with Hart Casting and Danielle King, casting associate. Should I say where you're from, Danielle, or does that matter? Because can you hear me?
Sure. Yes.
It's Tesley, the Tesley office.
Sure. Yes, the Telsey office.
Welcome, both of you, and thank you for coming on. We appreciate you. I just want to I'm going to change my background first. I don't like that black. There we go. Bing. So I want to just start because I always like to start with people's journey, like how you got into this particular part of the business. So just tell us. Let's start with you, Danielle. Tell us a little bit about your story, where you're from, and what you were initially going into, and then how you got pushed over to casting. Tell us a
Sure.
little.
So I am from Houston, Texas originally. And I grew up acting, singing, dancing, performing, in all different types of capacities. And so I went on to Howard University, like Ada, to study acting. And while there, I was the vice president of the Howard Players, which is an organization on campus that puts on theater productions every year. One of my duties as the vice president was to be in the audition process for our show. And that year we did the production Eclipse. So in the audition process, I felt like I was really helpful in like determining who could deliver what we really needed. And I felt like a lot of my counterparts were like seeing things that weren't really important. And I was able to kind of like really advocate for certain people who might not have been like best friends with the people on the panel, but were more so like right for the roles. And I was talking to a professor about the process and how much I just really enjoyed the audition process and how we got a great cast out of it. And he just said, well, that's a job. And that just blew my mind. I'm like, well, how do I learn more about this job? And so he connected me with a casting director, Jen Harris, at the time, who was working at Woolly Mammoth Theater in DC.
In DC, that's in
She
DC.
in DC. She allowed me to shadow her in her season auditions. And after that experience, I just kind of felt like it was something that I wanted to pursue. And I've been pursuing it ever since. I got an internship at the Manhattan Theater Club here in New York. And I've been here in New York ever since working in casting.
Awesome, awesome. And so, I think you were president of Howard Players. That's cool.
I was the vice
That's such a
president.
historical organization, such a historical group. So that's awesome.
Yes, so
Okay,
many.
I want to divulge. I want to do what is that? Divulge that Danielle is my cousin, so I'm proud of her. I do want to say that. I'm very proud of you. I know, right? Oh my God.
Yes.
So Erica, what about you? What is you're from Washington, DC originally, I
I
know, but
am.
what is your
I
path?
am. So that's we all are connected through the chocolate city of Washington D.C. But yes, I am originally from Washington D.C. and I went to school at NYU. It's not a HBCU, but that's where I went to school. And I went to school for film and TV. And I went in thinking I was going to be a director. But NYU, a lot like a lot of schools, they don't. I don't want to say they push you out of thinking that, or they, say like, look to your left, look to your right. It's only going to be one. But there is some of that going on too, just because, you know, a lot of people don't become directors. And the thing with NYU, it's a lot of writer directors as well, because it's the independent space. And so then I was like, I don't know if I want to be a director anymore. And this all happened within like maybe 6 weeks of my first year of college. And I was 18 and just moved to New York. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be a director. Maybe I want to be an editor, because I love to edit and I can edit. And I was like, well, I don't know about being in a room by myself with no windows for the rest of my life. I don't know if that's going to be the move. So still trying to figure out what I was going to do. And a film friend of mine wanted to make a film outside of the curriculum, which wasn't really allowed, but she was very adamant on the fact that everyone had their own specific jobs. So she was the director, and that's that. If you were the writer, you only wrote. If you were the DP, you only DP'd. And we printed out a crew list, and the second to last thing was casting director. And I have a dance background. And I was like, well, I have no idea what that is, but I know what an audition looks like. So I think I can do this thing. And NYU's film school, a lot, like a lot of other film schools or a lot of artistic programs, it was very competitive. And everybody was trying to be the best writer, the best director, the best producer, the best whatever. And I was in the corner doing that thing in that corner. And that thing was casting. And so nobody saw me as a threat. They saw me as an asset. And so they were like, can you do that thing for my film? I heard you did that thing for that film. Can you do that thing for my film? And I said, sure. So I cast all through college. My senior year, I cast like 23 thesis films, which I don't recommend doing, while being a full-time student, running 2 dance companies and having an internship and trying to have a life. So I don't recommend doing any of that. But then I interned at NBC Casting for a year, which was great because I got to see what studio network side looked like, as well as independent, because they were casting 30 Rock and House. So I got to see both sides for that year. And then I graduated and I started working at ABC Casting, and I was there for about 7 years. And then I left and started at Meredith Tucker Casting, where I met Danielle. So that's where we met. I was there up until the pandemic. And then 2020 hit, and I was given an opportunity to cast a show by myself. And I've been very lucky, grateful, and blessed that I have been asked to cast by myself throughout this whole last 3 years for film, TV, and now theater. So it's been a fun journey.
No, in this world, I mean, initially when you were casting for all of the, the student productions, you were kind of making up your own system.
100%.
Until you went into a structured, internship and then saw how it was done. Were you that far off doing your own thing? And
really not. It's really interesting because casting doesn't have a rubric, as Danielle knows. It doesn't necessarily have a like, this is what you should do. Of course, like baseline, bring in the actor auditions, show creative team, person gets cast. Like regardless of the medium, that's usually the basis, the foundation of the process. But I remember the first film I cast, it was called Waves. And that was the first film I ever cast. And I was giving people like my whole session being like, okay, we're going to be there from 10 to 4. What time do you want to show up? Then like, as you grow, you're like, well, maybe that's not the way to do it. But I still use the same login that I did in 2008 for all of my casting sites. It's the same login that I've been using. So that was really beneficial for me, is I got to learn these sites that we use every single day, and practice, as well as just practice, like you said, getting to know my system, getting to know what casting is as an 18 to 22-year-old. So I got to kind of like, trial and error, and also get to learn a specific talent pool, in New York City that would do these small independent films. And now looking back on it, a lot of the people that I brought in, I still bring in today, or I can't bring in because now they're stars. So like, that's always fun. And I think we'll talk about that later, but that's always fun kind of to look back 15 years ago and see not only my journey, but more importantly, the journeys of so many actors that started and where they are now.
Yeah. And that, I'm sure that's one of the things that you look at that is very fulfilling to see that process of, I think about She's Gotta Have It. When Spike started off, everybody that he started off with, that he moved with, Samuel Jackson, Halle Berry, all of them are like, you can't even touch them now. So that's an amazing process. So tell us a little bit about, just for the average layman who is clueless about what a casting director, casting associate, what your responsibilities are. Can y'all like break that down? What is a casting director's role? What are some of the responsibilities that you have? And you can bounce off each other because I'm gonna take myself out because I think this is good for to bounce off each other and the things that you both do.
Yeah, sure. So, as an associate, my job is to support the casting director, basically. So I think a lot about this business like really depends on like who you're working with, I think. So like I have at this point worked for 3 or 4 different casting directors, and they all have very different systems of how they like to hold auditions, how they like to complete paperwork, like all different things like that. And so I guess the easiest way to describe it is like to take you through the process, probably. Maybe I'll just start, and Erica, you can jump in whenever you like. Okay, so the first place to start is always the script. At least for me, so like the casting director would start like, kind of auditioning for the job. But that would not involve me. I would be brought on once the job is secured. And they would say, okay, we're going to work on this film, we're going to work on this TV show, read the script. So my first thing would be to read the script, kind of highlight what the characters are, how many roles we'll be casting, also descriptions of those characters. We call them breakdowns. So I would be reading the script, trying to figure out how to describe the characters and write breakdowns for them. Their background, their ethnicity, their age, their sex or sexual orientation, how they identify. Also, I would be like figuring out descriptive words that helped agents and managers kind of submit their clients for them. So let's say we are casting The Wiz, and I describe Dorothy as, a sweet, innocent, lost young woman. So the agents and the managers take those descriptions and they submit their clients based on the breakdowns that I write and post on websites like Backstage, Breakdown, Express, or the sister to that would be Actors Access. So once those breakdowns go up and agents and managers submit their clients, I then decide who is going to audition for the role. Or sometimes we don't always do auditions, we make lists. So I might make breakdowns and then I can think of 10 actors off the top of my head who can play Dorothy. Great. I might just go ahead and submit those 10 actors to the creative team and say, hey, do you like any of these 10 people? And they might say, oh, yes, we love so-and-so. Let's offer her the role. Or they might say, oh, let's have these 3 people audition and see who we like the most. So sometimes it's not everything goes into the audition process. But when we do auditions, we go onto a website called Breakdown Express, and we look to see who managers and agents have submitted for the different roles. And it really depends on the project, like how many people audition. And it's a lot different now, post-COVID. Because before everything was in person, obviously auditions were in person. So we could see maybe like 10 to 15 people for each role, including the one, especially for like one-liners or under 5 roles. But we probably would maybe see more people for like the bigger roles, the recurring guest stars and stuff like that. But sometimes less. Sometimes if it's like a role where it's like, oh, we need a certain level of actor or a star quality for this role or something like that, sometimes less people audition. But yeah, so We would have those, we would have, 10 to 15 people come for each role normally. But now, because of self-tapes, we're able to see so many more people, and we're able to see actors that we're not really familiar with as well. So like if I could only see 10 to 15 people, then I'm only bringing in people that I really know they can do the work, or like they can really come in and nail this probably. But self tapes allow us to, maybe take a chance on someone, or to get to know someone, go, okay, well, I'm not really familiar with this actor, but let me have them read, and then you get to learn new faces. And sometimes those people are great, and it's like, oh, awesome. I just learned a new person. I can bring them in for other things. So I think that's been great. And then from the audition process, then we get to narrow it down. So like that's probably our biggest job, like deciding who gets to be sent to the creative team. So we're kind of like I like to say we're a middleman, because we kind of like pre-screen the actors to decide like who gets to be seen for the creative team. We don't actually like make the decision on who gets the part. I think that's like a big misconception. So once we finish the audition process, if let's say I see 10 to 15 people, I might send 5 of those actors to the creative team so that they can decide who they would like for the role. Yeah, and then there's like paperwork and stuff that happens after that. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Erica.
Yeah, no, I think you went through the process really, really well. And just to say that, like, we're in constant contact with the creative team, like before, usually the casting director and usually the casting associate sometimes are on a call called like the concept call, especially if it's like, the first episode of the season, or, the first episode of the show, period, which is called the pilot. You'll have many conversations, especially if you're talking about leads called the series regulars, or if there's a new series regular, or if there's a big recur, someone that always comes back, maybe the lead's mom or the lead's brother. They might not be series regulars, but they always come back, in the show. And they're referenced. So we'll have something called a concept call, just so that we're all on the same page. At one point, the page is going to be different as the day goes on. I always say the breakdown, like Danielle was saying, is good for about maybe 5 seconds, because the beautiful thing about auditions is the fact that, this is the first time that these creatives are seeing their work in an unbiased way. And when I mean unbiased, I mean, y'all don't know these people, and the concept call, that would be the director, that would be the producer, that would be producers. Oftentimes if it's a studio network show, the studio network would be on that call, just so that everybody would be on that same page at one point. Because again, things change. These actors are coming in and showing their work. And a lot of times during that audition process, they're like, oh, yeah, I know I wrote it for a 20-year-old, but now I think it would be better for a 50-year-old. Or maybe it's better if it's a woman instead of a man. Or maybe it's better if it's someone who is Asian instead of being Latina. Or maybe it's open to everybody, So they find a lot of things during this casting process, this coveted process that we know of casting. There's a lot to be learned from. And sometimes the process is couple of weeks. Sometimes the process is a couple months. And then when you're dealing with theater, the process can be a couple years, so you're kind of on this journey for a very, very, very long time. But yeah, that's the same thing. But Danielle, like Danielle said, after you go through that, I love that she said we're middle men or middle people. I see it as a filter as well. Like we get all of these submissions, and then we distill it down to a select few of people that we actually give the opportunity to audition or to self-tape or to come in. And then from that few, we distill it down even more to show our creative team, those producers, that showrunner, those directors, et cetera, to finally make that last choice. And when that choice is done, our work isn't done yet, because like Danielle said, we still have paperwork to do. We have to do deal memos. We have to do Station 12s, which is a part of the SAG after. We have to clear actors if it's a SAG after project. We have to create cast lists. We have to create contact sheets. So a lot of things that people don't know. If you're interested in casting, it is very heavy on admin. It is very heavy on organization. It is very heavy on paperwork. It is very heavy on communication. I have found my voice a lot throughout these last 15 years. I was a shy kid. Not to say that you can't be shy in casting. There are places in casting you can be shy, but as a casting director, you have to be able to talk to people. You have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to kind of like figure out what fight you're going to fight and which ones you're not going to fight. Because like Danielle said, at the end of the day, it's not our decision. So sometimes you're going to have to fall on the sword, and sometimes you're going to be like, no, I'm going to carry the sword, and it's figuring out that. I always say, if you want to go into casting, take a psychology class, because it's a lot of dealing with people. And yeah, there's just a lot of things. The thing that I love the most about casting is that it's a connecting tissue. We talk to so many people on set, and I'm speaking through a TV lens. Not only are we talking to the agents and managers and the crew that I was talking about, the directors and the producers, but we're also talking to costumes. We're talking to ADs. We're talking to live producers. Sometimes we're talking to props. I was on a show and they needed to know the spelling of everybody's name because they had to make name tags because everybody was working on a store. You're talking to sound. You're talking to hair and makeup. An editor's not doing that. A DP is not necessarily doing that. We're talking to so many people, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
musical directors.
Yeah,
like I worked on I worked on a musical TV show, and we worked directly, with the choreographer and the musical director when we're casting people who sing and dance. And those people we set them up to go into the studio. So we're also sometimes talking to engineers and musicians. So yeah.
So let me ask you this, because the first thing Danielle did say was you start with that script. Now, when you read a script, and when you read a script, you could have two very different images in your mind of that character. And it can be so much different from the producer. Are there often times where you have to persuade a producer to think out of the box, like, hey, this a person of color would be good here, or why don't we do something that we have an Asian person here? Or are there often times where you do that? Do they listen? Do they dismiss you? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, no, I think it goes back to what I was talking about. I think there's always a way to get your point across without, seeming a certain way. And I like to use the moments of asking questions, questioning, like you kind of said, like if they're like, yeah, there's a senator in this script and he's going to be in his 50s and he's going to be a white man. It's like, does he have to be a white man? Does he have to be in his 50s? Can he be a Black woman in her 30s? And a lot of times they are simply just thinking about their biases and the fact that like maybe they're not even thinking about that because that's something that they didn't grow up with. Right? Like if you're like, oh, Danielle casts a show called And Just Like That. And there are a lot of rich people on that show. I just finished it today, actually, Danielle. Congratulations. There are a lot of rich people in that show, or any show like Succession or Billions, or any show that has to deal with a lot of money. And so it's teaching and educating people that like people of color got money too, like you can fill the world in an authentic way, because that's what the television and film and theater and commercials and podcasts should be. It should be a reflection of the world that we live in. And so what I do is I always ask that question, like, are you sure? Like, oh, maybe we can do this, or maybe we can do that. And I think that's the job of the casting professional, is to ask those questions, because again, sometimes they're not coming from a racist place. They're just coming from a biased place or an ignorant place, or just a place that they're not familiar with. And I think that's why having casting directors who are of many racial backgrounds, many gender backgrounds, many sexual orientation backgrounds, many whatever backgrounds is very important, so that that person can come from an authentic voice and an authentic place and ask those questions that people might not know how to ask.
Yes,
So
and I also
just listening to you all, it's really important to have a person of color that is conscious in your positions. Because I don't think it's it may not be biased, it may not be racist, but I think that if you're not, a person of color in a position and you're conscious, you just won't give a damn. You just cast it and you'll just whatever. And so it's really important to have, you all are pretty much like you said, the psychology class is good, sociology class is good, but you really are acting as advocates. advocates to think a different way, to think outside the box, to what would be a normal script. Um, so yeah, you all are important, but there's not a lot of people of color in your positions. Is that not the
No,
case?
that is definitely
And
not the case. And Danielle and I have seen it for firsthand, especially, in 2020 when everybody woke up and was like, "Oh wow, we live in a racist country." We were in a lot of conversations, and we quickly realized that, of course, a grand scheme of things, there aren't a lot of us, but in New York specifically, there are not a lot of us. Danielle, I'm sorry, did you want to say?
but damn, I would think there should be more in New York than there are in California. I mean, New
Well,
York seems more progressive.
the industry is just bigger in LA in general. So
Yeah.
there's just more that exists in LA because there's just more happening in LA as far as the television and film industry. But I was gonna say it actually just so happened that like literally a month before the pandemic, me and Erica decided to get together and like throw a event for like all of the Black women that were working in New York. And it was maybe like under 10 of us there. And since the pandemic, there has been maybe like our number has like doubled probably, which is a blessing. But yeah, there are not that many of us out here.
And definitely, when I started 15 years ago, and I got to shout out Erica Jensen. She was holding it down for years, and she was not only the only Black woman, but the only person of color casting for years. And
what about Robbie Reed? Robbie Reed, what came in with Spike?
Oh, I mean, in New York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because a lot of people go out to LA because when they think of film and TV, they just think LA. So that's why there are a lot of people out there because it's just like, oh, I'm going to be in the industry, so I'm going to go out there. Whereas like here, classically, it's just theater. So she was holding down theater for so long because, back in the day in New York, you only had Sopranos, Sex and the City, and, Law and Order, and so those had their specific casting directors, but she was holding it down theater wise and some TV as well. But now, like Danielle said, we have grown a lot, but we're still growing. And I think in 2018, I was still at the studio, and I realized at 28 that I was the only person of color, not Black woman, not Black person of color, who was a casting person in the corporate casting space. And that means for CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, and WB. I was the only person of color, and I was 28. And it was crazy to think of that. So I think not only is it important to have people who are casting directors as people of color, but also as associate casting directors, casting assistants, casting interns, because this is a very trajectory-based industry, especially casting. It's a very trajectory-based. So it's great to have casting directors who are Black and people of color and Indigenous. That's great. But we got to start somewhere. Right. So like having people who are starting off in casting, that's a beautiful thing. A lot of people are interested in casting. People didn't know what casting was years ago, but now there's a huge boost and boom into people who are interested in this art form and this craft. So we just got to keep it going.
Well, it's not like something that's focused or concentrated on in your teaching in college, the college level.
I think that there's only like one college or university in all of the country that has a program where you could like focus in casting, or maybe two.
Because can't you focus? There are a couple. There's SCAD. Chapman has a program.
I know about SCAD. There's not that many.
There's not that many. Absolutely
no. So the training the universities need to become woke to start training people in this profession. It's important.
Well, the training happens like on the job.
Yeah.
For casting. So, and I don't necessarily disagree with that way that it happens, mostly because I think a lot of people come into casting later. So they probably need to make money. So, if you can learn on the job while you're being paid, like if you were an electrician, like a lot of electrician programs exist where you learn on the job and you get paid. I think that casting has recently done a good job of like creating programs like that, because people are just now finding out about it. And a lot of those people are already, adults, who need to make a living. I also think that it's just a lot of it. It's just hands-on experience. So, yes, you can learn it at a collegiate level, but I also think that it's probably going to be best to learn from someone who's like really working on a project that's like, happening right now. So you can get like the real pace of it, and work with real professionals, because it's also about your network as well. So like it's good to be working with actual producers and casting execs, and like you're gonna know, you need to know all of these people, and they need to know who you are as well if you're going to continue to grow in the business.
There's a lot of things that just was going through my head when y'all were talking. One, is this a lucrative profession? Because I mean, one we talked about the collegiate level, but I think with the way Erica did it, which was getting on every student production and casting, is the training initially until you can get to the professional world and intern. But once you do, is this a lucrative profession starting off? Do you have to grow with it? How do you know your worth when you do learn on the job, so that you can be compensated based upon your value?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, listen, I was 21, making $500 a week, eating rice and beans, thinking I was queen of the world. Like I didn't know better. I thought I had money. I was like, I've never made $500 a week in my life. This is it, and the situation is, to answer your question, no, we are the lowest paid craft on the set. I think there's
not lower than extras.
No, well, the department
is like the crew side.
But hey, I mean, who knows? But lowest paid department on set. And I'm talking via. I mean, I can film, TV. I think most people would agree, regardless of the medium. I think there's a lot of systematic problems that are based in that. It's a female and a queer-led industry. Back in the day, it was seen as a secretarial job. And a lot of people have a lot of comments about that. That would be a whole different other panel. But the truth of the matter is, there are a lot of people who have left the industry before this time where we're in now, the strike, because it is a hustle. A lot of people do have two jobs. I had an intern who was working at the studio, was interning, but then was waitressing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Friday nights into Saturdays into Sundays, because you're not making that much money. And when you're an assistant, you're not in the union. So you have to get benefits. We as casting directors for film and TV, we are fortunate enough to be in a union. We are Teamsters. But if you're not an associate and above, you are not getting those benefits. And also, there are many people who are above who are not making those benefits, because we have to work to accrue those benefits. So you have to accrue 600 hours. Our weeks are 60 work weeks, so about 10 weeks. You have to work consecutively during your pay period, the eligibility period. And if you're not in that, then you can lose your insurance. So it is a hustle. It is a grind. That's why a lot of people do work into the studio system. There's pros and cons to both. I've worked in both. I know both really well. But I think if you love something, you love something. It's the same things with actors. We talk to actors all the time, Danielle and I, and we say, we're a lot like you, especially on the independent side. We are going from gig to gig to gig. We might not be auditioning, but we're interviewing, similar to our friends, be like, oh, I had a meeting with so-and-so, and a friend of mine will be like, oh, I just met with them too, and what's meant for you is meant for you. I do believe that, but you're often interviewing and auditioning with that. And sometimes it goes your way and sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't go your way, hopefully you have a job coming up. But if you don't, there are long periods of time where people don't work, and so you have to get creative. I do a lot of teaching, on the collegiate level. And I try to find myself in different areas. So if I'm not working on a TV show, then maybe I'm working on theater. If I'm not working on theater, maybe I'm working on a commercial. If I'm not working on a commercial, maybe I'm working on a live performance. Maybe I'm working on a podcast. Maybe I'm working on a VO, and so my dad is someone who always says there are two types of people, someone who knows a little bit about a lot and a lot about a little. And I see myself as someone who knows a little bit about a lot. And I try to get in there when I can. But yeah, it's a hustle. It's a grind. But if you love it, you love it, and you find a way to make it work. And sometimes you are there are a lot of people who are casting assistants for years. There's some people who are casting assistants for 6 months and then get bumped up to associate casting director. And then 2 years later, they're casting directors, and that's whatever your time is your time. But if you're going to make it work, you're going to make it work. It's not going to be easy, but you're going to make it work because you love it.
Is it best to be in a union? You have CSA behind your name. That's casting. Is that Society of America?
So, yes, I'm a member of CSA. It's Casting Society. That A used to stand for America, but now it's just Casting Society because we have people all around the world. But CSA is not a union. It's a society. We are union members for film and TV. We are Teamsters. So in New York, we're Local 817. And in LA, that is Local 399. So that is our union for film and TV casting directors. Theater casting directors are not unionized, and this is only for TV casting directors in New York, LA, and Hawaii. So if you're a casting director in Atlanta, well, that's a union-free state, but like in Texas, I think that's a union-free state too, but you are not covered by the union. So that's something that we are constantly talking about, trying to get all casting directors covered. But the first stop was to get somebody unionized, and then we can branch out from there. But it's a fight. Everything's a fight. Nothing's easy.
So that CSA, is that pretty much like an advocacy group that assists? No?
Well, it is yes, it is an advocacy group. CSA, Casting Society, is a society, right? So it's not a guild, it's not a union, it's a society. It's we're about 1,100 strong of casting directors who are film, TV, theater, commercials, et cetera, video games, reality, and this was started back 40 years ago by some pioneer casting directors whose goal was to get us in the union and to get us an Academy Award. Because to this day, we still do not have a category in the Oscars. At the Oscars, the Academy Awards. We have a room in the Academy Museum, and this year, there's season 2 of the podcast is about casting directors, and yet we don't have an award in the Academy. But that will probably change, hopefully sooner rather than later. Fingers crossed, hopefully sooner rather than later, because again, casting has always been in the conversation, but even now more so, it's even more of a push. But that was that. But also, to create a society, to create a group of casting directors. There's some things that we can and cannot do, but this is a group of casting directors. You don't have to become a member of CSA. It's not mandatory. There are many famous casting directors who are not members of CSA, and there are many famous casting directors who are. Correct. We'll get there. I'm on the board of CSA, but there are more than one ways to skin a cat. But CSA is not a union; it is a society.
So,
which has committees. It has one that is advocacy. It has one that is based in festivals and panels. There's one that is events. That we do a lot of things over at CSA.
So you mentioned your dad's advice, which is great advice. So we are, being able to branch out and do many things and be well versed. So we're in the midst of the writer's strike and the actor strike right now. How is that impacting you all, your industry, the casting industry overall? And how are you all coping with this and with those unions, with the strike?
Well, I mean, obviously, we're directly affected. If you work in television and film, the theater is not striking. So I think, at this point, the writer's strike happened in mid-April, and production was still going on, just without the writers. It wasn't until SAG began striking that production ceased. So right now, things are a little interesting because SAG is giving out waivers. So if you're working on an independent film or something like that, you're able to get a waiver from SAG, and it allows actors to begin working. And when the actors are able to work, everyone else is able to work.
Also, independent film is not being affected at all because they're not union.
I wouldn't say that they're not being affected at all,
Uh-huh.
but there are exceptions being made if they agree to the terms that SAG has introduced to the AMPTP. Yeah. So
Okay.
if they agree to those terms, and they're allowed to get a waiver, and then they can film. But not some of the actors, some of like the bigger actors are saying like it's not even worth it to work right now. Like I think there was an article that came out that Viola Davis's production that was going on before the strike, they got a waiver, and she said no, she didn't want to work, she didn't even want to film it right now because she wanted to stand with all of the other actors. So it just kind of depends. Me, I don't know, I can't speak about like generally, but I can speak to myself personally, as someone who for the last 5 years has really only worked in television. I have kind of pivoted to working in theater, which has been lovely because that's how I started. Like the first production that I really worked on was Choir Boy on Broadway. And so I've been able to go back into that space and do some, I think I've done like maybe 3 off-Broadway shows since the strike, as a casting associate or a casting consultant as well. And it's been great. I've gotten to meet a new pool of actors, which is always nice for me. And yeah, it's kept me busy in the meantime. I think that what the writers and the actors are striking for is really important. We should all support them while they are fighting for what they have a right to. So yeah.
No, I agree 100%. Like, I think, it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time. It goes without saying. And film and TV is halted for the most part, except for if you get a waiver. I think, like Danielle said, I'm very lucky in the sense that I started working in theater during the pandemic. I did a few things with the National Black Theater. I did more than a few things with the National Black Theater and with the Drama League, but I made my Broadway debut in 2021. And so that has been going and going and going and working on theater, and not only just like the Broadway theater or the off-Broadway theater, but a lot of developmental work. I've been doing a lot of readings and a lot of workshops and a lot of work sessions and things like that, which has been really, really fantastic. And commercials are still going, which is great. Voiceover is still going, and some animation. I was able to do a couple of pickups for this animation film that I did last year. So there are things, but a lot of casting directors are not working. Like a lot of crew members aren't working because a lot of them are specifically for the film and TV industry, especially when we're talking about LA. There's not that big of a theater scene out there.
Yeah.
So a lot of most of the LA crew members, be it casting directors or whatever, are not working right now. So I think, I've been telling actors, I've been telling casting professionals, I've been telling mentees, I've been telling anybody who is asking for advice right now is to lean into things that fill your cup. Like, think about when the camera is not rolling for actors, or when the curtain goes down, like what makes you you, and leaning into that, because I think acting comes from living. And if you're just only focused on this one aspect of your life and not anything else, you're going to get a little bit of a tunnel vision. So, if you love to paint. If you love to write. If you want to take a dance class, go take a dance class. If you want to go climb a rock, go climb a rock. This is the time. For every pro, there's a con. I don't necessarily know if I'm ever going to get a free summer again, like Daniel said, like the strike happened at the top of May. I haven't worked on a TV show since February. I wasn't constantly looking at my phone. I didn't have an email every 2 minutes. I didn't feel like I was being anchored down, and I think everyone's talking about work-life balance and what that looks like. And Felicia Joseph, who is a great casting executive over at Disney, she's the head of casting over at ADC, excuse me. She told me about, work-life balance, because work is a part of your life. You have your personal life and your work life, but it's still life, and how do you use both of them? So I know this is very woo-woo, but I've been leaning more into the freedom that this time is, and doing things that I wouldn't be able to do. My best friend just got married on Saturday, and I was her maid of honor, and so I was able to be 100% with her and for her, and completely focused on her. Whereas, like, if I was working on episode 702, I wouldn't necessarily be able to focus 100%. And so I think that's what this is what I'm grateful for this time. There are a lot of things that, are a little scary and interesting, but there are a lot of things that I am grateful for this time. Being able to focus on my personal life, being able to focus on my family, being able to focus on my friends. Because for the past 15 years, that I've been working in this medium, 12 professionally, it's been a grind. It's been a hustle. It's been back to back to back. You haven't been able to breathe. And now there's been a little bit of breath. So I've been trying to lean more into that.
That's great advice. That's true. That is so true. Work-life balance. That is so true. Let's kind of switch gears for him, because that was really good, insightful. What just in terms of the process, can you tell us, like, dealing with auditions, what's the number one thing you tell an actor or an actress to do or not to do in an audition, especially with the self-tapes tips, since everything is, not everything is not live anymore, it's by tapes?
Yeah, I think, and Danielle, hop in, because I think this is the beauty and the beast of casting, or the beauty and the beast of the entertainment industry. It's based on opinion. So everybody has their opinion. Everybody has their process, like Danielle said. Everybody has their way of doing things, and seeing things, and seeing auditions, and seeing actors. But I think the beauty of that is the fact, what I tell actors all the time, is that you have to bring yourself in the room. We have to know who you are. I don't want to say the roles get bigger, but maybe as more lines you have, the more opportunity you have to show us who you are. Right? If the role is the role of Alex, it's not what would Alex do, because they really don't know what Alex would do. Again, this audition process is kind of their learning process to see who Alex is. And the only way they can figure it out is if you bring your own choices. And when people say choices, they mean your point of view, your opinion to that piece, and knowing what that is, and doing your work, doing your script analysis, reading the script, first and foremost, if you get a full script, reading your sides, preparing in any way that you can, but coming in with those choices, coming in with those point of views, those opinions, so that we can see who you are. I think self-tapes, they're here to stay. They were here in the beginning. There were many casting directors that were specifically exclusively doing self-tapes even before 2020. They were doing first round exclusively on self-tapes. But now it's more of a necessity. And I think, like, we've had the opportunity, like Danielle said, to see more people. And I think that's a big, huge plus about this self-tape situation. I think the thing to think about self-tapes is the number one rule is that we just need to hear you and we need to see you. Everything else is a bonus, right? So, like, you don't need a fancy camera. You don't need a fancy light. You don't need a fancy background. You don't need a fancy this or that microphone, whatever it is. We just need to hear you and see you. Now, maybe don't shoot it in a cave. Maybe don't do all that, but like, like think about it before. But I think people are kind of stressing about the technical aspects of self-tapes, and they're
I will say, to the technical aspect though, you don't need all of those other things, but you do need to follow instructions.
Well, yes.
Because I think that I know me in particular, I go out of my way to be very detailed into what I need from you and your taping as an actor. So like, if I need you to how you should hold the phone, like, don't record this way, record, like, I go very into detail. If you're having trouble with Wi-Fi, how you can plug into your router. Like, so if I'm asking for something if I'm asking you to do something in particular, and you don't do that one thing, well, then I know that you haven't read everything that I gave you and you haven't followed the instructions. So like little things like that, I think that's something that you definitely need to worry about. But like the quality of it, as long as I can see you clearly and hear you clearly, then you're doing great,
And similar to what Danielle said, like, when you're going to go on set, when you're going to go on stage, when you're going to go in that booth, you're going to be given direction. So like Danielle said, there's going to, even if it's just like 2 sentences of, not necessarily rules, but instructions on what to do, you should follow them, because I'm not saying it's a test, but it's a test. Like there's a way to rename your file, like Danielle said, or things like that. Just follow those directions, because, one mistake, that's one thing. But if it becomes a habit, then it's like, I don't know if this person is paying attention. I don't know if I trust this person to go to set. When that is your thing, you're going to be following directions.
Also, you want to make it, as easy as possible for the casting directors and the creative team to want to hire you. So if you send me a tape and I have to edit your tape for you because you didn't put the slate in the right place, well, then that just makes more work for me in order to send you on the link. If I like your tape, I'm going to do it, but like not everyone has the time to do that, maybe. So you want to make it as easy as possible for you to be hired, and that goes a long way. So like if you have time to memorize, obviously it's not required, but like like Erica was saying, do your script analysis and be familiar with the words that you're saying, so that you don't have to worry about that, and you can just worry about the choices that you're making and being in that moment and engaged with your reader. That's a good tip. Have a reader. So sometimes when people are taping, they either like record themselves saying the lines. I mean, that doesn't necessarily bother me, but I do know casting directors who are like, oh, I can tell that they're just reading with themselves. Like some people don't like that. So
it just stresses me out. It's not that I don't like it. It just stresses me out, because I know that you're counting. I know that you're like, okay, I gave myself 15 seconds to say this one line before I come back in. It just stresses me out. So I would say last resort, of course, but like Danielle said, get a reader. They don't have to be in person. You can put your phone on, you could get somebody on Zoom and just have it, or call somebody and put it on speaker. But most of the time, unless it's a monologue, you are going to be acting against somebody. And we do need to hear those lines.
Yeah, totally. And then I would also say, as far as like how you're representing yourself, so like your pictures, your headshot, your resume, certain things like that. Let's start with the resume. So for the resume, I think that, you need to be honest on your resume. Just like if you were going out for a corporate job and, they might try to verify where you went to school. And if you're dishonest about that, obviously you're not going to get the job. I think that, you have to be honest about your skill level, your skill set. So like in those special skills sections, if you say that you play the guitar, I'm probably am going to call you in for something where you have to play the guitar. If you can't play the guitar, one, that's going to make me look bad. And two, you're going to make yourself look bad. So you want to be honest, about those special skills or your height, your singing ability, things like that. Your level of dance experience, credits. Cause I definitely know people who go, they were on this show with this director, and they will look it up, so you want to, or call. Exactly. So, you worked with this person. How were they on set? Da, 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 da. So you definitely want to be honest about everything that's on your resume. I think that for your pictures, you just want to look like yourself. You want to take pictures where you can easily show up to the room looking exactly like your picture. And that doesn't necessarily like mean wear the same shirt as your headshot, but it means like if you wear braids a lot, you need to have pictures in braids. So if you happen to show up that month, that summer you're wearing braids, you need headshots for that summer that have braids. If you lose a lot of weight, a significant amount of weight, or gain a significant amount of weight, like you might want us to try getting different headshots, because as you change, your headshots need to change. Like you can't use the same pictures that you used in college, and now you are 10 years removed from that. I think having updated pictures and pictures where like you really look like yourself is best. And that doesn't and also like where you look like your best self.
Mhm.
I think so. You want pictures that represent you in the way that you want to be represented on your best day. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get your makeup done professionally or anything like that. Like if you're gonna come in and you're gonna be clean face and vibrant, then you want to have your picture where you have a clean vibrant face on, where if you walk into the room and you have a face full of makeup on and your picture is clean face, and you might look a little different, like you don't want to confuse people or go, oh, okay, hello, how are you today? You want, like I said, you want to make it as easy as possible for you to be hired. So if I'm looking on Breakdown Express and your picture, you have like a very serious full face of makeup on, and then your audition, you just got out the shower and you look clean and fresh, like I might go, oh, well, I chose you because I thought you were going to give me like a glam, look. So I think that, it's like little things that make a big difference in those areas.
Yeah,
That's a I was gonna say that's a great point. I want to just, because we're winding up soon, but I want to. Can you speak to the whole AI and the potential impact it's going to have on actors? Will it be a domino effect in the casting arena as well?
I mean, here's the thing with AI.
How are you feeling about that?
Here's the thing with AI. Y'all need to realize it's not just us.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's every piece of industry in this whole world that's going to be affected. I come from a long line of lawyers. My aunt is a lawyer. She deals with contracts every single day. The first pass used to be thousands of pages. Now it's hundreds of pages because of AI doing the first pass. There'd be a lot of lawyers that were hired to go through these contracts. That number has cut, So I think we just need to realize that, unfortunately, fortunately, whatever the word is, that this AI situation is here.
It's actually like been here.
It's been here.
I think that's one of the problems, is that like, especially with the actors, like they already have people on their system, so it's like, how do you fix something that's in a retroactive way? Like, are the studios going to agree to delete your image? Like, how does it work? I think there's no real example of how to move forward. I think it's a real big issue.
Yeah, I think it's just, you got to business as usual, work as if this, because honestly, like, we don't have any regulations on it right now. Yeah. We don't have any rules on it right now. We don't have anything on it right now. And so I think, what is it? If you worry twice, what are you worried about the first time? Whatever that saying is, it's like, only worry about it when it's there. We don't know what's going to happen. Like Danielle said, it's been here for a long time. Even on Gmail, it knows how you answer certain things. It knows your cadence. It knows your rhythm. It knows the words that you use on a daily basis. That's AI, And so I think it's just, you got to do what you got to do right now. Just move on, business as usual, until we get regulations, until people know what's actually happening in our business specifically, let alone the business at large. It is what it is. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, ladies, this has been awesome. I wish I could just go on talking to y'all forever. But this has been good. I think you all gave some really good pointers, good insight to casting. And I think I think that we have to be encouraged, especially as Black actors and actresses out here. We need to be encouraged, because a lot of times we go into auditions thinking, oh, this role isn't for me. Oh, they don't have it, so we have to really stick to be encouraged. So I want to thank you two for being advocates, for being, and it's activists to a certain extent. It's covert activism. Activism. But I want to thank you all so much. Danielle, I'm going to go through both of y'all, but how can people get in touch with you if they want to reach back out?
So they can email me at dkingcasting@gmail.com. Just reach out. Let me know that you saw this recording. If you want to send me headshot and resume, if you see that I'm casting something and you want to submit yourself, or just want to chat about how to get involved in casting, I'm totally available.
Okay. And Hart Casting, how can people reach you?
Yes, it's on your screen. It's at elove67, Instagram, IG. Send me a DM, like Danielle said. If you see something that I'm casting, if you see something that I have cast and you have questions or you're interested in casting or, whatever it may be, I am there more than I am on my email. So, yeah.
And now's a good time, people. Have downtime.
You never know. You never know. Shoot it out. Shoot it.
Mm-hmm. Do you all cast for independent films as well?
Mm-hmm.
I know you moved to TV, and so you do still do the independent as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, I want to just leave. If you all can just leave folks with just, I guess, word of advice. If they wanted to get into the casting world, if they're going out for casting, what are some jewels you'll leave before we head out?
You want to go?
Let's start with you. Start with you, Danielle. Over there.
Okay. I think that I always tell people to watch television and film, because so growing up, the way that I grew up, I was always surrounded by a lot of Black art. And so when I started casting, I knew all like generations of Black actors off the top of my head. It was like nothing for me, but I didn't know anything about any other sort of races and the artists and the actors and the directors. And I just didn't know anything about it because I was always so in my house. It was just so focused on like Black art. And so I always tell people like watch things and watch a diverse, a diverse spectrum of art, television, film, plays, because you need to know those actors. You need to know as many actors as possible if you're going to work in casting. And it took me years to learn actors. Like I remember, I'm famously known for this. One time, Michael Douglas, who of course a lot of people know, but I had no idea who Michael Douglas was. And I was working on my first job, and he called the office to talk to my boss, and she was busy, so I took a message. And I gave her the message. She said, "Danielle, Michael Douglas called the office," and I was like, "Yeah, that's what he said his name was, Michael Douglas." She's like, "There's no way Michael Douglas called the office. What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "It's Michael. I don't know. The guy said his name was Michael Douglas. Like, what do you want from me?" And she called him back, and it was Michael Douglas. And she was like in awe and shock, and I just had no idea who he was. And so I remember everybody made fun of me that for like 2 weeks after that, and I had to like go home and watch Michael Douglas movies. And I'm like, "Oh, Michael Douglas." And so like, and that might be a generational thing as well, but there are a lot of instances where like I just did not know someone because I had just never seen something that they were in. So I always tell people if you want to work in casting, you need to watch everything that you possibly can and watch a diverse spectrum of it, and not just focus on things that you might like. You need to watch all the things so you can know all the people. Mm-hmm. That would be my advice.
Good advice.
And I would give that same advice to actors too. I think, if you want to work in this business, regardless if you're an actor, casting person, whatever, watch, read. These are the things that you want to be, right? So I think it's important to know who the players are in town, in front and behind. I think if you are either in casting or an actor, I think just realize that there are a lot of wins along the way that you might not even be seen as a win. Like anytime you get an interview as a casting person, anytime you get an audition as an actor, those are wins, right? These are opportunities that are not given to everybody in the pool that you are in. So if you're an actor and you're getting an audition for a student film, if you're getting an audition for a non-union commercial, if you're getting an audition for a series regular, whatever it is, just realize, like Danielle said, we are the middle people. And like I said, we distill people down. So we get thousands upon thousands upon thousands of submissions for, like Danielle said, those under 5 roles, those one-line roles. We're not bringing thousands upon thousands of people in, even during this time of self-tapes. We're not, because that would defeat the purpose. We're bringing in a very small percentage of those people. And so you are in that small percentage if you are getting that opportunity. And along that line, that number is getting smaller and smaller. So if we're bringing in 50 people, we're not going to send 50 people to the director. We're going to send maybe 10 of those people. If you're in one of those 10, that's great. If you get a call back, we're not going to call back all of those 10 people. We might call back 3 of those people, and you're in that 3. So your number just gets smaller and smaller. Same thing if you're a casting director. If you are being interviewed for a new television show or a new movie, or there's a new position open at a new theater, just realize that everybody's not getting that interview. You know, there is a reason why you are being getting that interview. And per Danielle's point about being very honest on your resume, because we all talk, you know, if you went to Howard, at a certain point, Danielle knows who you are. And if she don't know who you are, she's going to call somebody that does know who you are. So, you know, that certain thing. If you worked in New York in casting at some point during the last 15 years, I know your boss and I'm going to call your boss. And if it's like, yeah, they said that they're an associate. And it's like, well, Erica, they were an intern. It's like, ooh, okay, good to know, you know? So just be as honest. But again, on the flip side, you were given this opportunity for a reason. Why couldn't it be you? Why can't you get the job? You know, do your work, do your preparation, do your research. If, you know, you're going in for an interview, you're going in for an audition, research is still important regardless of what it is. Do your research, show up as your best self, like we were talking about the headshot, but still show up as your best self and take it, whatever it is. If it's not yours, it's not yours. Rejection is God's protection. And if it's yours, then it's yours. But yeah, I think, you know, during this time, a lot of being held on to, but if you're given an opportunity, you are given an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. We will leave with those 2 tidbits, those treasures. Thank you, ladies, both. This has been awesome. We're so fortunate to bring Charnel Brown, who played Kim Reese on A Different World. She's actually going to be coming to San Antonio and giving 2 workshops, acting workshops. So we're excited about that. And she has an academy in Houston, Danielle. I don't know if you knew that. She had an academy in Houston.
I love that.
Yeah. So we're excited about that. But thank you all. We really appreciate it. And I hope folks reach out to you and, you know, now that you've given the particulars about landing a role, that the next role is for them. You all be blessed. Have a good rest of your day, your evening. Peace.
Thank you.